Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's FCICA product promotional webinar. This morning we have ARDEX Americas with us. We have Seth Pevarnik. And Seth, you are the Director of Technical Services, correct?
Yes.
Great. So Seth, I will turn this session right over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everybody. As Kelly said, my name is Seth Pevarnik. I'm the Director of Technical for ARDEX. I'd like to welcome you here this morning and say thank you for taking some time out of your busy days to spend a little time with us this morning, reviewing some of the ARDEX materials. Today's session kind of focuses on the choose your solution approach that we take to the market, basically choosing the right product for any given application for a specific project. And we're going to focus on the moisture control systems, self-leveling materials, as well as patching materials. But before we get started, what I'd like to do is show you a short video of ARDEX to give you an idea of who ARDEX Americas is from a global standpoint as well as an Americas standpoint.
Around the globe, construction begins before dawn. So does the drive for quality at ARDEX Americas. The R&D team designs products that establish new industry benchmarks. These scientists can perform 400 lab tests on a formula before it graduates to field testing. At several ARDEX manufacturing sites across North America, carefully sourced raw materials must pass stringent quality control testing to earn admission to the manufacturing process. A highly trained team ensures systems precisely measure every batch of more than 300 finished products. Manufacturing employees are dedicated to safety and committed to uphold ARDEX as the leading global manufacturer of engineered cements, adhesives, and high-performance building products. Before a finished product enters inventory, it'll pass 10 additional tests to ensure quality standards. These same standards of excellence are extended by ARDEX professionals who provide superior customer service that sets ARDEX apart from other manufacturers. ARDEX Shipping and Logistics respond to the demands of a busy and broad network of the leading and largest distributors across North and Latin America. As a product reaches its destination, a single point of contact writes and reviews specifications for architects with attention to a solution. The ARDEX architectural team works with more than 100 ARDEX field experts who have undergone rigorous hands-on product training at ARDEX Academy. These professionals must demonstrate product proficiency through annual technical proficiency exams. They walk the job site with the customer and convey job site recommendations to ARDEX Technical Services. Together, this network of experts tailors thousands of job site recommendations in the retail, healthcare and education, hospitality and entertainment, military and government, and transportation industries. The Technical Service Department leads free training for nearly 10,000 installers annually at ARDEX Academy locations in Canada and in the US. Field training is conducted at local venues across North and Latin America. Hands-on experience and guidance from ARDEX technical advisors instills confidence on the job site. Approved installations qualify for the industry best full replacement warranty. Excellence in people, products and service is bred into ARDEX Americas from its base in Witten, Germany. The ARDEX Group covers the globe in more than 50 countries, where 2,000 plus employees are ready to serve you for more than 40 subsidiaries. ARDEX Americas is proud of its heritage as the world's leading supplier of engineered cements, adhesives, and high-performance building products. From the people at ARDEX Americas, we work at ARDEX, but we work for you. Call to see what we can do for you today. 1-888-512-7339 or visit us online at www.ardexamericas.com.
Okay, so we shall continue with the webinar here. So as I said previously, we're going to focus on moisture control systems as well as new self-leveling underlayment technologies and patching materials. Not advancing again, Kelly.
There you go, Seth.
Okay. Beginning with the MC systems, I want everybody to understand that the MC materials are designed to control moisture in the form of vapor, not physical water. They're not waterproofing membranes. We're not stopping liquid water, hydrostatic pressure from coming up through below grade concrete. It's water as a gas, water as a vapor. Our MC systems are low viscosity materials, very easy to apply. They're highly cross-linked resins, so you have chemistry happening. These materials resist a pH of 14. When you look at the pH scale, 7 being neutral, the low end of that scale, 1 being very acidic, the high end of the scale, which is 14, very alkaline. These materials need to be able to resist the pH of 14 due to the excessive moisture emitting through the concrete, taking the natural salts from the concrete to the surface. Those salts are extremely alkaline and could push pH readings of 14. We're using these systems under all interior standard commercial floor coverings. No restrictions there. And we're using these systems for moisture levels in the concrete that exceed the maximum permitted by the manufacturer of the floor coverings. We pigment these materials purposely to make them very easy to apply. You can basically see where you're going and you can see where you've been. Makes things easy. Clear systems out there can be a little difficult to see, especially if there's a second coat that is applied. The clear systems, not having a pigment, may afford to have a missed area or a holiday. So we specifically pigment them to make our materials easy to see, making sure that you got 100% coverage over the concrete that you're applying them to. Talk a little bit about substrate preparation. Substrate prep is key for whatever you're installing over the concrete. And the bottom line for these systems, the concrete needs to be clean and free of contamination. The International Concrete Repair Institute has devised a series of rubber stamps, rubber chips, that have different concrete surface profiles. A CSP of 1 has very little texture. CSP of 10, which was added a few years ago, kind of looks like the surface of the moon. So when you get into structural repairs to concrete, those products may require a very rough texture to get a good mechanical bond. Some of the 100% solids epoxies out there require a concrete surface profile to get good mechanical bond, such as a CSP3. Other materials out there may not require a CSP. But I want everybody to understand that the industry uses these concrete surface profiles. So whether it's a moisture remediation material, a patch leveling material, a structural repair product, you will see in some cases manufacturers referencing these concrete surface profiles. They're pretty inexpensive but valuable investment. These rubber stamps, they cost roughly about $100. You purchase them from the International Concrete Repair Institute, but it's an easy way to compare to ensure that the proper prep and the proper profile have been achieved. Shot blasting is a mechanical method for preparing concrete, not only to clean it, but also to create a certain profile. It's a machine that's self-contained. There's a wheel in there that spins at a very high velocity, throwing steel shot at the floor at also a very high velocity, and it works on impact resistance. So as the steel shot hits the floor, it breaks up the surface of the concrete. There's a HEPA system on the shot blaster that vacuums the dust away, and the shot's heavy, so it just gets continue to be recirculated. It leaves a very clean surface, and enables the concrete to achieve a certain profile that's specified. Grinding is another method for preparing the concrete. if you happen to shot blast, the grinder doesn't get up to the edges, it doesn't get into the corners, and you can use angle grinders to mechanically clean the edges and the corners around columns, etc. And a lot of people think that you may not be able to achieve profile with a grinder, because you can certainly polish concrete, with a grinder, but they do have more aggressive diamonds that will actually profile the concrete. You can achieve CSP4, CSP5 by grinding. Some of the diamonds are called PDC blades. Another manufacturer has diamonds that are called T-Rex blades, and they're very aggressive. They scratch the surface to basically gouge it to create profile. So grinding is another mechanical method of cleaning the concrete and achieving profile if necessary. ARDEX MC Rapid. This is 100% solid epoxy, two-component material. You have A reacting with B, 100% chemical reaction that's happening here. We're using this material over a concrete substrate to remediate excessive moisture. This can be used on all grade levels. So if you have excessive moisture emitting from a below-grade slab, you can certainly use ARDEX MC Rapid to remediate that moisture to levels that are acceptable for the finished floor covering to perform. RH in concrete is a common method. Testing for RH is a common method for seeing what moisture levels are in concrete. And similar to reading the relative humidity of the ambient area, there are obviously probes out there that can be installed into the concrete to also read the humidity level in the concrete in the form of a percentage. And MC Rapid is suitable for use over a concrete slab that may have 100% RH reading. MC Rapid has a very low permeability. The standard for testing permeability is ASTM E96. Upon conducting this test on MC Rapid by independent third parties, we established a perm rating of 0.06. When you look at ASTM F3010, this standard is the standard specification for 100% solids epoxy moisture remediation systems. And to qualify for that standard, one of the criteria is meeting their perm rating that they establish. The standard specification for a vapor retarder that goes underneath a concrete slab, whether it's on grade or below grade, is 0.1 perms. ASTM F3010, the specification and standard for epoxy moisture remediation materials, states that the maximum perm rating would also be 0.1, similar to that of the vapor retarder underneath the slab. And we're pleased to report that MC Rapid has a perm rating of 0.06. So from a preparation standpoint, the concrete must be mechanically cleaned. We recommend a minimum CSP of 3, has a certain degree of texture. The maximum would be a CSP of 5. We don't want the texture to be too rough, because we get into a CSP 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you have a variety of high points and a variety of low areas. And it makes it very difficult to apply an even film to get the correct mill thickness, the correct coverage of MC Rapid over the high points of the concrete. So a CSP 5 would be the maximum. If you had concrete that was greater than that, it would be a matter of doing additional prep, such as grinding, to knock some of those high points down, or using a leveling material to smooth the concrete out. And that leveling material would need to be suited for use underneath the moisture control system in an application that would be indefinitely damp. The MC Rapid is applied with a roller or a notch squeegee. If a notch squeegee is used to apply it, we recommend back rolling. Okay, typical application is 10 mils. 1 mil is 1/1000th of an inch. So 10 mils would be 10 thousandths of an inch. Same with 14 mils, that would be 14 thousandths of an inch. The thickness of the application can be verified with a mill gauge. So while we will talk about general coverage rates, you can purchase mill gauges. They look like a credit card, as seen in the picture there, that have little nubs on the bottom. And you simply place that into any type of wet coating and look at where that coating has touched on the underside of those nubs to equate to a certain mill thickness. Okay, the MC Rapid is black in color. We pigment it purposely to make it easy to see where you're going and easy to see where you've been. From a coverage standpoint, at 10 mils thick, you're approximately 250 to 270 square feet per unit, and that depends on what texture the concrete may be. Porosity plays into a little bit of effect of the coverage. At 14 mils, you're roughly 170 to 190 square feet per unit. And for this application, it's a sand to refusal application. And we'll explain why at 14 mils with sand, you broadcast sand to refusal. We'll explain what those applications may be. Sorry about that, was having arrow problems. The MC Rapid is called a rapid epoxy because it cures extremely quickly. You're applying the material, and just 4 hours later, you're able to work on top of it with the next phase of the application. The 10 mil application is a very common application to receive self-leveling or trial grade underlayments. Requires a primer in just about every case, and that primer would be P82. P82 gives you a chemical bond to the epoxy once it's cured. We also have a self-leveling material called K60 that we will talk about a little further in this presentation, and it can be applied directly to the MC Rapid without a primer. So for speed of installation, apply the MC Rapid. 4 hours later, you're mixing self-leveling and coating the MC Rapid with no primer. No cost of primer, no labor to put the primer down, plus it speeds up the installation. The typical application for a 14 mil application with sand or refusal is for ARDEX toppings, so self-leveling toppings that are going to be used as a finished wear surface. And this system with the sand broadcast of the refusal actually helps reduce the risk of cracking into the topping material. And we also use this 14 mil with sand application for the ARDEX concrete management system, and we'll spend a few slides talking about what that is. Here's just a picture of MC Rapid installed on a concrete surface. Okay, picture of K60 being installed directly over MC Rapid without a primer. Picture of cured MC Rapid, 4 hours old, and the application of P82 as a primer. Simply rolled on like a very thin coat of paint, and then patching and leveling materials would proceed over the P82 once it is dried. The ARDEX Concrete Management System, short for, or long for ACMS. This is an application where the moisture control and the self-leveling is taken care of right out of the gate in the project within 3 to 7 days of pouring the concrete. Okay, nothing changes here from a construction of the building standpoint, from a application of concrete standpoint. Quite simply, pour the concrete as usual. You can cover cure it, as you see in the picture here, with a heavy mill plastic, or you can use a standard curing compound as normal for curing the concrete. And once that concrete is cured, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 7 days, depending on what the engineer would like, we would remove the plastic if you cover cured it. If it was just a curing compound, we just go directly onto the concrete, and regardless of whether it's cover cured or curing compound, shot blasting it to a minimum CSP of 3. And the beauty of shot blasting in this phase of the concrete is your output. Looking at this shot blaster here, for example, was a 20-inch width, and they did about 14,000 square feet in roughly about 3.5 to 4 hours. It's wide open, so that you're just make real long passes. And the fact that the concrete is only 3, 4, 5 days old, you're running at almost 100% capacity of the shot blaster. Roughly 85 to 90% capacity was done on this project, when typically with a shot blaster you're only running at about 30 to 40% capacity, or 30 to 40% total speed, because you're trying to remove contamination. So the speed of blasting in this application is very quick. Once it's blasted, the MC Rapid is rolled out to 14 mils in thickness, and then a very fine sand is broadcast to refusal, as you see in the picture. After the sand has been swept and vacuumed off the floor, the leveling materials are applied directly to that sanded surface. When you broadcast sand to refusal and then sweep that excess, basically the bottom part of the sand particles in the epoxy, the top part of the sand particles sticking out of the epoxy, and that surface feels like 80 grit sandpaper, something like that. And the leveling materials are basically grabbing on mechanically to all those angular sand particles sticking out of the epoxy. ARDEX VR95. This is a new material for us here in the States, in the Americas, I should say. It's a product that originated out of the UK, out of ARDEX UK. And this is one of the beauties of having some 35 plus ARDEX companies around the world. We have access to different technologies in different parts of the world. And this material here the technology came from the UK. It's a single component material, ready to use. It's a waterborne resin. And we're using this on new concrete that may have excessive moisture. So we're using this to suppress the residual moisture, the water of convenience in a concrete slab, so that it doesn't affect the finished floor covering and the adhesive. And we're using this to relative humidity levels in the concrete of up to 95%. We're using this over absorbent concrete. So the concrete doesn't necessarily need to be profiled, okay, but it does need to be clean, and it does need to be absorbent. So if it's not absorbent, there would be a mechanical process necessary to make the concrete absorbent. But if the concrete is absorbent and it's sitting at a CSP1, that's suitable for the application of VR95. This is a material that's applied at approximately 8 mils thick in the wet state. Very easy to apply, and we're applying 2 coats. It's a 4 1/4 gallon pail, so with 2 coats, that pail is covering roughly 400 to 425 square feet, depending on the texture and the porosity of the concrete. Okay, the first coat, being that this product's a waterborne material and it's going over absorbent concrete, is drying in approximately 30 minutes, so it's drying pretty quick. The second coat dries in approximately 2 hours. The beauty of this material is this product, in addition to remediating residual moisture in the concrete, we're using this as a primer for the self-leveling products or the patching materials. So once that second coat's dry in approximately 2 hours, we're ready to apply self-leveling, we're ready to apply patching material. Material is applied with a roller, very simple, rolling on a consistent 8 mil coating, 2 coats each. Again, the thickness, similar to that of MC Rapid, can be verified with a mil gauge. Okay, and based on the picture, you can obviously see that we pigment this to make it easy to see. We pigment it blue. You can see where you're going. You can see where you've been. Those are your 2 moisture control options. depending on what the application is. So it's basically choose your solution. Is it a renovation, below grade, where we never know what that moisture level is going to be? We go with MC Rapid. If it's new construction and we're just looking at residual moisture in the concrete, we have an option of using DR95, and that's a less expensive system for that application. Self-leveling. We offer a complete toolkit to make things very easy for use. The toolkit consists of a 30-gallon mixing drum, a paddle that conforms to the drum. You have the water buckets for the self-leveling, so that we're putting a specific amount of water into the leveling material, because they do have, the different products have very specific water amounts. We also have a spreader that gauges the thickness of the material, whether it's an 1/8 inch, a 1/4 inch, whatever the case may be. And then a smoother that's drug over the surface immediately to pop the air bubbles created during mixing. You know, self-leveling is a very fluid material. You can see a couple of bags that were mixed in a barrel and are dumped out onto the floor. The spreader's used to gauge the thickness. If we just simply start dumping product, you know, and we estimated the project at a 1/4 inch, if we just start dumping material, we could easily have a 1/2 inch. So the spreader gauges that thickness. We have some other tools that make self-leveling very easy. So instead of having a couple of guys carry those buckets from your mixing area to where you're dumping it, we have a barrel cart called the ARDEX Rover. That's seen in the left picture. There's 4 casters on the bottom, so those wheels spin in any direction, being that they're a caster. And the handles allow for easy transportation, and it's actually hinged to the point where you can dump that barrel by holding the handles past the 90-degree angle to disperse the material from the bucket. From a mixing standpoint, if you see on the right picture, we have what we call the ARDEX Dust Free. Attaches to any shop vac and clips onto the top of the barrel, and controls dust from mixing, so that we're not getting airborne dust into the air. For doing super flat floors and dead level floors, we have what's called the ARDEPEG. These are plastic tabs that have measurements on them, and they have a double stick foam tape on the bottom, and you apply these in a grid pattern to the floor, maybe a 3-foot grid, and with a laser or transit, you cut the tops of these pegs to the same elevation, and they're used as pins to gauge how much material we actually need. So these will be used in doing super flat floors, such as television studios, the warehouses with the robotic fork trucks. They could be used quite simply in a hallway. You know, if you look down a 200-square-foot hallway and it looks like a roller coaster, you could quite simply put a couple of tabs in the low areas. You know, that floor may not need to be level, same elevation throughout the whole floor, but you certainly want it flat to take the rolls out of the floor. And you can drop a couple of these level pins in the low areas so that you know how much material you need in those low areas. You also see with some of our self-leveling materials, we have high flow products that go down at an 1/8 inch thick, and we'll use a spike roller to flatten out those materials. And in the top picture is a picture of a spike roller, also referred to in the industry as a porcupine roller, typically used with epoxy products. I want to make you aware of some of our ARDEFLOW pump systems as well. The picture on the left is a small pump that runs on 220 volts, 30 amp. It's a 3-phase material. Three-phase pump. The 3-phase allows the main motor to turn in reverse if necessary. And quite simply, you can see the top hopper with the serrated teeth on the top where you break bags into that hopper. That hopper will gravity feed the powder into a mixing chamber where the water comes in. You can see the hose coming into the front of the pump. The main motor that's driving a mixing paddle in there, and the rotor stator, which is at the bottom of the throughput, you'll see that green stator that has 3 tension bolts on it, and there's a very tight corkscrew rotor in the middle of that not only creates pressure to push the water and the material through a hose, but it also helps mix the self-leveling in the water, the powder in the water. And that little pump there, small enough to get in an elevator and get up onto any floor, pumping through a couple hundred feet of hose, is able to pump out anywhere from 100 bags an hour to 200 bags an hour. There's a rheostat selector switch on there that you can speed it up or slow it down. So just to give you an idea, 100 bags an hour would be approximately 3,000 square feet at 1/4 of an inch thick. 200 bags an hour would obviously be at double that at 6,000 square feet at 1/4 of an inch thick, just to give you an idea. We also have some high capacity and medium capacity pumps that are fed by super sacks, as you see in the top picture. 2,200-pound bag of self-leveling in what's called a super sack. And whether it's the cube that you see in the top picture or the Power Flow, which is a trailer type pump, these super sacks are dropped in via a lull or a forklift. There's a big knife that cuts the bottom of the super sack and allows the powder to drop into a hopper. And then there is conveyors that will take that powder into a mixing chamber, a large mixing chamber that will mix the water and the powder together. We'll drop it into another hopper where there is a 3-foot version of the green rotor stator you see on the small pump that will actually push that material through a hose up multiple stories of a building. So the cube and the Power Flow are for applications where we park the truck or the cube outside. No powder is going into the building. We run pipes up the side of a building, and you pump the material through a hose up the pipe onto the floor that you're working on. The cube, to put things into perspective from an output standpoint, the cube will pump roughly 300 bags to 400 bags an hour, and the Power Flow can pump up to 700 or 800 bags an hour. So a lot of volume in a short period of time. Wanted to make everybody aware of those pumping options. Hang in there, we are getting there. Just a picture of self-leveling. Self-leveling is designed to flood the whole area to create a new flat, smooth surface. If you go back to the early 2000s, some 15, 16, 17 years ago, you see products like K15, and K15's been around since the mid-70s. V1200, that's our workhorse self-leveling, a lot more cost-effective for concrete applications. And we have a lower prep type family products called GS4 and LU100. GS4 became a product some 17 years ago. It was designed specifically for distressed gypsum. For years we had been walking away from installing products like K15 over distressed gypsum type poured floors out there because they don't have the integrity to withstand typical self-leveling materials out in the market, such as K15. We developed GS4, which is a gypsum plaster Portland hybrid material back in the early 2000s that does not create any stress when it cures. So it can be poured over the weak gypsum material without failure because it's a low stress, low tension, virtually no tension, type material. But the difference with the GS4 compared to the existing gypsum, it has a very high strength, compressive strengths of over 5,000 psi, tensile strengths comparable to that of concrete, if not higher. But very good flexural strength too. Concrete having a flexural strength of about 600, 400 to 600. The GS4 has a flexural strength of nearly 3 times that at about 1,500. 2 years ago, we developed some new technologies with regard to self-leveling. K16, which is a high-flow thin application version of K15. K13, which pretty much does everything that the K15 does, but it's a little bit more cost-effective. And the K10 reactivatable high-flow material. We'll spend some time on that this morning. From a specialty standpoint, the K60, we'll talk a little bit about that today. That's a technology that's been basically the staple over in the UK dating back to the 70s. Now, it's been improved over the years, but it's a product that they've had over the UK, and it's the predominant self-leveling material in the UK, and we made that a part of our line a few years back. The other product is K22F. It's the future version of the GS4, high flow, fiber reinforced. We'll spend some time on that. So from our Choose Our Solution marketing campaign, basically choosing the correct product for the application that you have. K60 is a no water mixed product. It's a bag of powder and you have a gallon of latex. A lot of goodies in the powdered form. Mix it with a gallon of latex and you have your self-leveling material. Very low tension material. Use it over all standard materials or substrates out there: concrete, terrazzo, ceramic and quarry tile. This will adhere to steel without a primer. Select epoxy systems. We use it over adhesive residues. A lot of goodies in this material that enable it to bond to difficult substrates without priming. It will stick to a piece of porcelain tile with no primer. This material is speeding up the self-leveling application as a whole because we're taking the primer out of the equation. Just a picture of the K60 used in a hospital application. Interestingly enough, while this is a self-leveling material, the sand in it is extremely fine. And over in the UK, you see a lot of flooring contractors using this as a skim coat material, trialing it out. So if that fits your needs, no issues. You can trial this out like a typical skim coat product. Very fluid, extremely smooth finish. Just another picture of the K60 that's used over a pretty large area as a self-leveling material. The K60, you can walk on in a couple of hours like any typical self-leveling material. Moisture insensitive tiles, we're talking about ceramic and quarry tile, the hard type tiles you can do in as little as, you can install in as little as 6 hours. Porous back carpet, about 12 hours, and other floor coverings in the neighborhood of 16 to 24, depending on the application. If you're doing a resilient and a pressure sensitive install, it might be more along a 16-hour time period. The wet set vinyl back installation, be more along the 24-hour period from a dry time. Sorry, it's not advancing again. There we go. So from a square foot standpoint, it's a 35-pound bag. You can pour this at 1/8 of an inch, and that 35-pound bag does roughly about 42 square feet. So in addition to being able to pour this very thin and still have a flat floor, the density of the product equates to a greater coverage than you typically see out of leveling materials. At 1/8 inch thick, it's typically a pound a square foot. 50-pound bag at 1/8, 50 square feet, for example. Just an example of K60 installed over MC Rapid without the use of a primer. You can see that it's a very fluid material. K10. This is a new product for us, about 2 years on the market now. If you think of self-leveling, if you've used self-leveling before, they're considered standard flow materials. K10 is what we call a high flow material. It is high flow compared to a K15, a V1200, a GS4, an LU100, and those type materials. The material almost looks overwatered when you mix it to the correct water ratio. But that's the beauty of a high flow material. The other thing that is very interesting with regard to this material is it can be reactivated. Once it starts to set, you can reactivate the material to make it fluid again. And we do this with the use of a spike roller. We'll show you a little bit of the reactivatability here in a future slide. Pretty versatile from a substrate standpoint, going over concrete and terrazzo and ceramic and quarry and epoxy systems and adhesive residues. Okay. Again, high flow, very liquid. You're able to pour it at 1/8 of an inch and reactivatable. Your typical application would be gauging it out, as you see in the picture, with a spreader. Set the skis at your required thickness. This product is typically used at 1/8 inch thick. It's used a lot over the MC Rapid, especially when the floor covering manufacturers require that 1/8 inch blotter layer, that 1/8 inch cementitious layer, so that their adhesive, the water in the adhesive has some place to absorb into. So the beauty of K10, it's able to be installed over a MC Rapid material, the epoxy remediation material at 1/8 of an inch thick, given the surface that 1/8 inch cementitious blotter layer. The spike roller is immediately run through it to create a very flat surface. The material flows for about 10 to 15 minutes. If for some reason you don't get into the material and it's starting to set, you can go back in it with the spike roller and roll that through it multiple times, and it makes the product fluid again so that you don't have a ridge in the floor. You can actually get, in some cases, up to 25 minutes of working time with this material. So it enables the installer to go wider, to have less cold joints with self-leveling, and it's really a much more forgiving application because of the long working time. Again, like typical self-levelings, you're walking on it in a couple of hours. You can install it up to a 1/2 inch thick. The common application is an 1/8 inch thick with the K10. Pretty high compressive strength at 4,700 PSI. Okay. Again, the moisture-insensitive tile and stone, roughly about 6 hours. You get into the vinyl back flooring, 16 to 24, depending on the application. To put things into perspective from a coverage standpoint, B1200, that's a standard flow material. You're typically pouring that at 1/4 of an inch thick in that 50-pound bag. Yields 25 square feet at 1/4 of an inch. A 50-pound bag of K10 High Flow, allowing you to pour it 1/8 of an inch. We're doubling our coverage for that reason. 1/8 of an inch thick, we're going thinner. That 50-pound bag does 50 square feet. Okay, better yield, more cost effective. That's the beauty of high flow technology. K22, a new member to the family. As I told you earlier, the GS4 was designed specifically for gypsum leveling materials, the distressed gypsum, so that we don't have to tear them out. And it's a blended material, a Portland plaster gypsum type hybrid material that doesn't create any tension when it cures. So it's able to be installed over the distressed gypsum floors without causing failure to the floor, allowing that floor to perform and install new flooring over it. The K22 is basically a future generation of the GS4. Number one, it's a high flow technology. So GS4 being standard flow, we're typically pouring 1/4 of an inch. K22F being a high flow, we can pour this at 1/8 of an inch and create the same smooth surface. This product's excellent for use on challenging substrates like gypsum, existing patching and leveling materials. We can use this over wood, for example. It's a fiber reinforced product. It has microtech technology. We have small microfibers that are used in this material to give it added strength, give it added flexibility, especially on those demanding substrates. High flow material, so coverage is great. That 50-pound bag, you can pour it at 1/8 of an inch, you're yielding 50 square feet. Double that of your standard self-leveling, because you're typically installing the standard self-leveling at 1/4 of an inch. Okay, again, 50 square feet at 1/8. Okay, we also use a spike roller with this to help create a super flat, smooth surface, even though you're only pouring it 1/8 of an inch thick. Typical application, is 1/8 of an inch thick because it is a high flow, but it can also be installed up to 1.25 inches if necessary. And we can certainly taper it to a feather edge to meet transitions, different substrates, etc., to create a nice transition. Floor coverings in as little as 24 hours. From a patching standpoint, we have a variety of different materials to choose from depending on what solution you need when patching a floor, whether it be skim coating, whether it be ramping, whether it be sloping, whether it be screeding. Okay, and we're going to focus on some of the ones today that are used under finished floor covering. Feather finish, that material goes back to 1993. It's been the benchmark in the industry. And this product became a product not from ARDEX. I mean, this was a voice of the customer type product. You go back into the late 80s, into the early 90s, and there were still a lot of gypsum products out there on the market, the gypsum skim coat materials. The contractors loved these gypsum materials for a couple of reasons. Number one, they were unsanded, so they were very creamy, very easy to use, very easy to trowel out. Number two, they dried pretty quickly. Okay, two critical things for installers when patching a floor. You look at the Portland cement technologies out there as patching materials in the late 80s, early 90s. The contractors did not like them. Number one, they were sanded, so it was very gritty to trowel out. And number two, they took a long time to dry, in most cases overnight. Unfortunately, with the gypsum materials, they're sensitive to moisture. They have lower pHs. They get wet. They're a nice host for mold and mildew to happen. And a lot of them did not have really good integrity, really high strength. So a lot of the flooring manufacturers, primarily all the flooring manufacturers, would void the warranty over gypsum materials, which left the contractors in a bind here. You got the flooring manufacturers saying, don't use gypsum, use Portland cement materials. You got the installers saying, I don't like the Portland cement materials because they take a long time to dry, they're gritty, they're sandy. I like the gypsum products because they dry quick and they're creamy, easy to use, no sand in it. And we had a lot of contractors come to us, as well as flooring manufacturers, and say, hey, why can't ARDEX make a product similar to that of the gypsum materials in the fact that it dries quick, it's unsanded, has the working characteristics that the installers like. But yet it would be a Portland cement, calcium aluminum type cement technology that is going to have strength. It's not going to be susceptible to moisture and things growing on it. And we basically took that to heart and went to R&D and said, listen, we need a material that is unsanded, easy to use, sets up quick, sticks to anything. A lot of the patches out there need latexes and milks. We want this to be a water mix only. And they developed feather finish. They developed a self-drying cement matrix that can bind up the water. And they took this matrix and built a product around that matrix and around those specs that the installers wanted and the flooring manufacturers wanted. And that's how feather finish became a product. It was a voice of the customer type material. It's a water mix material, unsanded, self-drying, pretty much sticks to anything. Okay, superior coverage, and that wasn't our original intent. But that was the reality of this technology. There's no sand in it. The density is such that you have all these light, fluffy materials, the cement, the powdered polymers, and they equate to extreme coverage. Even compared to some of our other sanded materials, this product, feather finish, has better coverage. For skimming, up to 300 feet per bag is a skim coat. Okay, self-drying material in as little as 15 minutes. Where you have any mass to the product, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, probably about 30 minutes to a half hour, it'll be hard enough to work on, and you could glue down sheet vinyl without fear of the moisture in there affecting the adhesive or the floor covering. It binds that water up chemically. Okay, true feather edge, and we say true feather edge because there is no sand in it. So if you took a piece of finished grade plywood, applied the feather finish with a steel trowel, you could basically fill in the grains of the wood and it would be see-through. That's the beauty. Okay, pretty much sticks to anything without a primer. We've had feather finish since 1993, 24 years, going on 24 years for us here. But you don't always need the Cadillac for every product. We have a material that's a step-down product from feather finish. It's called SKM. Okay, still an unsanded material. Okay, still very easy to trowel out, very easy to skim with. And it's for those applications that you know, may not need the Cadillac. You know, for maybe carpet applications, but you still need to do some patching. Okay, the SKM is a lot more cost-effective than the feather finish. Doesn't have all the bells and whistles. You know, the coverage, even though it's unsanded, you know, it's not as great as feather finish. Only up to a couple 100 feet per bag, per 10-pound bag. Takes a little bit longer to do its thing chemically. So for skim coating, it's about 30 minutes. Might be an hour to two, where you're a little bit thicker, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, something like that. But like feather finish, you can use it up to a 1/2 inch. Okay. Another material, and the final material that I want to focus on today, is a product called SDP. And this product goes back to 1994. When we developed, we had a product called K55 at the time, which was a fast-setting patching material that we had. And we basically gave K55 self-drying material, or self-drying technology, improving it. And we changed the name to SDP for self-drying patch. The SDP is a sanded material, but it's a very fluid material. So you can see in the top picture that it pours out of the bucket. But it's not self-leveling, so it doesn't create its own flat surface. You have to help it, you have to move it around. But it's easily screedable. You can see in the second picture there, the contractor, the installer, is taking a 2x4 and basically screeding it into place to fill a low area. Okay. Again, very fluid consistency, easy application. It's a rapid setting material. So with the SDP Rapid, as you see in the bottom picture, that material, even at 3 inches thick, is like a rock in an hour. And you could glue down, you know, in a wet set application, vinyl back sheet flooring, you know, over that product that might be 3 inches thick, you know, in an hour's time period. Okay, so you have SDP Rapid, which is a fast setting material. You have SDP Standard, if you will. You got a little bit longer working time with it. So if you're doing larger areas where you have to screed into place, you know, maybe a 12-foot span, making a transition, you know, you can go with SDP Standard that gives you a longer working time. Okay, you're still putting flooring on that product in an hour and a half or so, but it's giving you more working time to place it. Again, both these products up to 1 inch, neat material, and up to 3 inches with the addition of pea gravel. Okay, just to give you some more pictures and some ideas on how SDP is used. It looks like in that first picture they're using a self-leveling material. It looks like that because it's pouring out of the bucket. We're using the barrel cart. We're using the self-leveling bucket to mix it. But the reality is it's SDP. It pours, it flows very easily, but it doesn't move once it hits the floor. Easily moved with a trowel or with a screed. When you dump it to the floor, it looks like a big pancake that doesn't move at all. But you can see in that top picture, easy to mix, easy to pour out, keep enough material in front of that screed, and you're basically screeding it into place to fill a low area. And that's exactly what they're doing in that picture. For an application that size, we'd use the SDP Standard to give you a little bit more working time. If you're doing transition work at door jams, and you're just going out a couple of feet to make transition, and you need to get on it ASAP, you have the option of going with SDP Rapid. It just speeds the installation up a little quicker. Well, first I want to thank you for spending some time with me here this morning. The Choose Your Solution presentation with the MC products, the self-leveling and the patching materials. I'm going to open it up for some questions here now.
Great, Seth. And we have, before we get started with questions, I want to remind everybody that you can go ahead and submit your questions at any time. Just look on your control panel there, select that question tab, type your question in, and we'll get it right to Seth. We have time for a couple questions. If we do run out of time, we will take your questions, submit them to Seth, and he will answer them right back to you. So our question, Seth, this is from an attendee who could not attend the live session. He says his question is for warranty coverage, and it says if it's on or below grade slab is not properly isolated from ground moisture effects, what coverage, if any, does the warranty provide regarding moisture mitigation products?
Yes, so for the moisture materials below grade, that would be an MC Rapid application. We have our, if anybody went in and bought a unit of it, it would be a year warranty, just replacement of product. However, there are extended warranties available. A couple of criteria on our part. So we want the contractor, the installer, to be trained by ARDEX Technical in the use of the product. And then secondly, we have what's called a pre-installation checklist, where the contractor would simply complete as much of that checklist about the project before he actually does the project, and we review that information with him, and it's basically a way to protect him as a contractor and us as a manufacturer, so we can both look at each other in the eyes and do 2 thumbs up before we even mix 1 unit of material, saying, hey, this makes perfect sense for this application. We're going to stand behind it. We're going to issue a 20-year warranty on this, that if there's a defect in the material, we're covering everything top to bottom, materials, concrete, all the way up to finished flooring and reasonable labor. So that's the warranty aspect of things. But to answer the specific question, these products, whether it's MC or other epoxy materials out there, are warranting, moisture vapor. So excessive moisture, water is a gas, water is a vapor coming up through the slab, so that it won't affect, that moisture and alkali will not affect the performance of the finished flooring. When it comes to liquid water, hydrostatic pressure, these products in the industry, to include MC Rapid, are not designed to remediate liquid water and forms of liquid water, from a pressure standpoint. So one of the things that we do to try to take that out of the equation in the checklist is we want everybody to take a walk around the building. And let's make sure the landscape isn't, running towards the building, allowing liquid water to just run into the slab, or it's not at the base of the hillside where the rainwater just runs into the slab, or we look at planters that are on the outside of the building. So it's another liquid water source that could provide, liquid water, into the concrete. Drainage around the building, things like that. We take a good hard look there so that we can take out of the equation, the liquid water saturation, below grade, hydrostatic issues, take those out of the equation.
Okay, great.
So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. If you, any of you need a clarification on that question at all, please go ahead and send that over to us. We are about out of time this morning, though. So again, if you have additional questions, I'm going to send out Seth's email information to you. You can send it directly to him. You can also send it to me, and I will forward it to him.